that I've been washing my hands in forever. I know there is hope in these waters, but I can't bring myself to swim when I am drowning in this silence. Baby, let me in. Go easy on me, baby. I was still a child, didn't get the chance to feel the world around me. I had no time to choose what I chose to do. So go
Well, good morning, everyone. Good to see your faces this morning. Grateful that you showed up today to share this Sunday in community with us. And whether you're here in person or you're joining us online via Facebook or YouTube, we are grateful for every single person that is joining us in community this morning. And we are grateful to celebrate Mother's Day with all of you. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that and what it means in so many ways, more than just for those who are considered mothers. So today, just know that you're welcome here, and we're grateful to have you. And we're going to make these songs our prayers this morning that we sing over each other. So if you know them, sing along. If you're new, if you're not in a place to sing, just be as you are.
In you and know that you are with me forever. I'll confide in you, 'cause you're the only answer that matters. Even in the darkness, you will be my light. Even when I'm hopeless, you will be my guide. I will not be shaken, I will not be moved. Even in the chaos, I know that you're good. You're the keeper, protector. It is you that holds us together when everything else failed us. It is you that holds us together. Oh,
I will trust in your thoughts and plans of me. They are good, and I will wait on you. I know that you will see me through, and even in the darkness, you will be my light. Even when I'm hopeless, you will be my guide, and I will not be shaken, I will not be moved, and even in the chaos, I know that you're good. So you're the keeper, protector. It is you that holds us together when everything
Well, thank you for being with us this morning. Welcome to Watershed if this is your first time. My name is Taryn, and I'm one of the staff members here. And we want to let you know that whether you're tuning in online or here in person, that we consider you part of our extended family. And we want to give you a chance to kind of say hi to some people around you. I know we're trying to be careful about shaking hands, so whether it's online or in person, maybe only hit elbows or something, but introduce yourself if you're online in the comments and here in person, and then we'll continue on together. So just to introduce who's up here today, if you haven't met all of us before, we have Tyler here on vocals, we have Dana here on bass, we have Paul on guitar, and Jay on drums. But for the first Sunday, now she's not new to volunteering at Watershed because she's been serving in Greenhouse for quite a while, but we have Jillian serving for the first time with our band. We've been talking to her for quite a while, and we're grateful. And you know, many of our band members not only are volunteers in other areas at Watershed, whether it be Greenhouse or back in the tech booth, but also parts of blocks. I think that both Tyler and Paul and all three of you, or Jay, are all part of the same block that Austin is in. So we highly encourage you to get involved here at Watershed. There's so many ways to get plugged in and know people and serve, and so we're really grateful for them. We want to teach you a new song this morning, so once you feel like you catch on, we'd love for you to sing along with us.
At the mention of your name, every knee will bow, every tongue confess that you are Lord. Oh, 'cause at the mention of your name,
At the mention of your name, every knee will bow, every tongue confess that you are Lord.
yeah, yeah. At the mention of your name,
Mention of your name, every knee will bow, every tongue confess that you are Lord.
oh, at the mention of your name,
At the mention of your name, every knee will bow, every tongue confess that you are Jesus, you are Lord. Oh, oh,
Jesus, you are Lord.
Jesus, you are Lord. Oh,
We give you all the praise.
Jesus, you are Lord.
So thankful for your grace.
Jesus, you are Lord.
'Cause at the mention of your name, may oppression cease. May we all be free and see you are Lord. Oh, 'cause at the mention of your name, may oppression cease. May we all be free and see that you are Lord. Yeah, Jesus. is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus.
To break every chain, break every chain, break every chain.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus.
There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain.
There is power
In the name of Jesus,
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. To break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. I hear the chains falling. I hear the chains falling. They're falling for you. I hear the chains falling. I hear the chains falling. I hear the chains falling. There's power in the name. I hear the chains falling.
Jesus, you are Lord.
Jesus, you are Lord.
Jesus, you are Lord.
So grateful for your
Jesus, you
presence.
are Lord. Jesus, you are Lord.
We thank you, God. Thanks for singing. Oh, gosh, you can see.
All right. Wasn't expecting call and response, but excellent. That's actually really helpful for me. My name's David, by the way. I'm one of the pastors here on staff, and I'll be back up a little bit later to talk to you for a longer period of time. And I love when I get to do that, to also do the announcements. Sometimes we don't like that because it's like, too much of a good thing, but nice. But I like doing it because it lets me kind of get a feel for the vibe, the energy in the room. Y'all, what you are also bringing to the table. And I know I'm cognizant of the fact that like my go-to audience participation people, one of them just moved to Hawaii. Jennifer, if you're watching this, I miss you. And one of them is in the hurricane-proof sound booth in the back, waving at me. So I'm looking for a couple of heroes this morning to kind of step up and make me feel as if someone is listening. And so far, so good. Announcements is why I'm here, though. There are a number of things we want to draw your attention to this morning. The first is especially near and dear to my heart because one of the things that I do here on an official basis is hang out with teenagers. And so next Saturday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., we are going to be hanging out here at Watershed for what we're very creatively calling our mid-May hangouts. So middle schoolers, high schoolers, any friends that they might have, literally any of them, who are also in the middle school to high school range, age-wise, are welcome to come, totally free. They are right now, as we speak, voting on what food I'm going to provide for them. So I really look forward to getting that news afterwards. And with Pride Month coming up in June, kind of a big deal here. We have been asked by our kindred community to create some sort of art project signifying, representing what pride means to our students. And many of you have probably heard me talk about this before. We have quite a few LGBTQIA identifying students in our space, and so really, really excited to kind of see what they come up with. And we're going to be spending a little bit of the time at the event on Saturday for anyone who wants to. I don't know, painting or doing something with scissors, or I've heard something about bottle caps, so I don't know, I'm not artistic. But that's this Saturday. That little QR code is what you can RSVP. Please do, if you are like a parent or a guardian of a student, because that'll just help me know how much food that they vote on to purchase. So that's that. Yoga. Yoga is something like therapy that everyone should do. And we have been doing yoga. Lauren has been leading yoga here, and it was originally going to be only for like 2 months, like 8 weeks, and the response has been so good, so enthusiastic, that she's just going to keep going. So we kind of want to just celebrate that this has kind of been a rhythm that has been introduced to our community that is going well, and in whatever stage of the pandemic we're in, late, post, mid, I don't know. I hope closer to later or post than mid, but just being able to have safe, kind of meaningful human connection, moving our bodies, both individually and collectively, I think has just been a blessing for a lot of people. And so we are excited to continue doing that. All the information is right there on your screen. And so if you didn't know about it, now you do. And we would encourage you to show up on Mondays. And everything we do, the food that I'm going to buy for the students when they vote for it, to all of the plans that we have this summer to celebrate Pride here in Charlotte, just everything that we do, none of it would be possible without all of y'all's help. There's a volunteer element to that. There's an accountability element to that, as you know, many of you speak into what it is that we do here, what we prioritize, what we value. And then there's a financial piece to that. Things cost money. I cost money. And so I say that both joking, not joking, in the sense that I am genuinely grateful for all of you who invest both literally, figuratively, metaphorically, and all the other ways in our community here at Watershed. The way we try to frame it is every month we are looking for 5 new individuals, families, givers to commit to the mission of Watershed on a reoccurring basis. And what reoccurring giving allows us to do is be strategic, be intentional. It allows us to make plans knowing that a certain amount of budget is going to be there, so we can dream a little bit, we can risk a little bit, we can be a little more bold, a little more daring in the ways that we are showing up both in this room, literally and metaphorically speaking, and abroad. And so thank you, all of you, for doing that. Thank you, those of you who helped us reach that goal in the month of April. As always, we try to make it very simple. Boxes in the back, online, the app, the website. Very, very simple to do that securely. So thank you, welcome once again, and I will see you shortly.
So in 2020, we all remember that, right? We were doing virtual services because we weren't meeting all back together. And I can remember right around that time, one of my very favorite poets who writes beautiful prayers and who has worked in local church in Europe for many years, Gerard Kelly, had released a new book. And it was a collection of some of his most beloved poems and prayers he had written for local church gatherings across the world. And much to my surprise, when I got the book in the mail in 2020, there was a poem included in the book that he had written back in maybe like 2015, 2014. I don't know, it was many years ago. I had reached out to him and said, hey, have you ever written anything for your community around single mothers or anything for mothers at all? And he said, actually, I was raised by a single mother, and I haven't, but I've always wanted to write a prayer just for single moms. And so he wrote this beautiful piece, and he emailed it to me, and we had shared it here at Watershed. And then all these years went by, and when I got the book, much to my surprise, I think we have a picture of it, I opened the book, and he had titled it Mother's Day and dedicated it to Watershed. And when I looked inside, I was just like, it was just such a beautiful gift, because I didn't realize that he had written it specifically just for our community. And so I wanted to reshare that this morning with one note, that you don't have to have a child of your own, whether by birth or adoption or fostering or otherwise, to be mothering. Mothering is a verb, and mothering is something that God does with us. Mothering is something that teachers often do with many of their students. I see mothering happening in the context of this community in so many beautiful ways. And any time that anyone is nurturing someone else, anytime someone is showing selfless love, it's a form of mothering. And so today we celebrate all of you who practice mothering, and we are grateful, all of us who are on the receiving end. When the day is longer than the energy you have for it, and the tasks you face outlast you 10 times over, may the rest and restoration, God, be your restorer. When the mouths you feed and the minds you mold and the hearts whose hopes you hold as guarantor engulf you, when the eyes whose desperation dents your dreams look at you and through you, may God, who sees the needs of all who seek him, be there for you. When you dread that you don't do enough and hate that you don't have enough, when you know that you don't know enough and fear that you won't be enough, when all you can be sure of is that there's something you'll need more of, may God, who is beyond enough, be your enough. May the one who has gone before you be for you. May the one whose arms enfold you hold you. May the one who is beneath you and above you love you. May the one who is all around you surround you. May you know beyond the boundaries of knowing and feel beyond the frailty of your feelings. You are loved. And may the divine, who is seen or unseen, be your Redeemer. I'm the mom of 2 teen boys. Pray for me. Being their mom is the greatest gift in my life, and I'm grateful for them, and I dedicate this to them today.
When you're my age, I hope the world is kinder than it seems to be right now. And I hope the front page isn't just a reminder of how we keep letting each other down. When I was your age, things didn't seem to be this hard. Riding bikes out on the street or playing tag in the backyard. You'll outgrow your shoes, you'll outgrow your bed, you'll outgrow this house. Just don't forget when you're all grown up, but you don't feel that way. You're still gonna be my baby, even when you're my age. When you're my age, you'll still be full of questions that I wish I had the answers to right now. And those dark times may make you second guess it. And I bet love will still be making the world go kids someday. Hope you teach them the Lord's Prayer before they go to bed at night. I hope you show them we're all God's perfect creations. We're all precious in His sight. And I hope you don't work too much overtime, so you can be right there beside them when they close their eyes. 'Cause they'll outgrow their shoes, they'll outgrow their beds, they'll outgrow that house, and you can't stop it. Life will line your face, time will turn the page, but they're still gonna be your babies, just like you're still gonna be my baby, even when you're my age. Oh, even when you're my age, even when you're my age, even when you're my age.
A poem, a response, a collective breath. The heaviness of this past week seems to have spanned into every crevice of our lives. A reminder of a collective inhale we've taken, possibly years leading up to the moment we're sitting in. Emotions ranging from sadness and fear to anger and hopelessness. What is so uniquely and beautifully ours, our bodies, our agency, is talked and decided about as if we're not in the room, not invited to be a part of the conversation. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do we matter? Too often we stray away from hard conversations or topics, partly because they're tough in and of themselves, but maybe because there's this assumption that at the end, someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong. You're right, I'm wrong. But maybe instead, this is a window for empathy, for listening and learning, for engaging and sitting with new information. So wherever you lay in this messy unknown, may we hold space for each other. Space to be angry, space to be sad, space to rise up, or space to retreat. Then again, only we know what we need space for. May we be gentle with each other, but especially with ourselves. May we together exhale.
It was me. That was me, all me. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, Des. Yeah, that's not how I was going to start. Well, I'm back. David, again, if those of you missed the announcement portion of our experience together. That's me, David Roberts, one of the pastors here on staff. Can you tell I'm thrown off? There I am. Yep, that's me. All right. Exhale. We're starting a new series today, Gold Leaf. As you saw, thank you to the British people who gave us permission to use that footage from the video. They'll probably never hear me say that. But what is the series about? There is, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation here. There is a artistic technique in pottery. I believe it originates in Japan. I think it's called Kintsugi. Kintsugi? I get the pronunciation wrong there. Here's the idea. Okay. Rather than discard or deem as a failure in some way a broken piece of pottery, a very precise, very careful, very special technique is used to meld, kind of gild, kind of piece it back together using gold leaf. And what gold leaf is just finely like pressed like sheets of gold. And when you piece it together, it looks kind of like that. It looks kind of like the point over here for you as well, kind of like the pottery and the cups and things like that you saw in the video, and really a philosophy has also sort of grown or been born out of this artistic practice, with the whole idea being what is broken kind of can be made beautiful again, and not just in sort of like a redemptive way, but there is something new, something additive, something that wouldn't have otherwise been there. And that kind of big picture idea is sort of what we're meditating on for the next, 5-6 weeks. I don't know how long this series is. It'll be fun. And so where do I show up in this, beyond just sort of kicking it off? We'll go with this. I don't believe in wholeness. Which is super encouraging, I'm sure, for so many of you people to hear. Oh yeah, the pastor at Watershed doesn't believe in wholeness. It's like, and wholeness in many ways, whatever people mean by that, is often sort of a central tenet, a central value, something that, I'm going to step back. I fell off the stage last time I was up here. It's this big idea that we're talking about in faith spaces like this. Many of you are probably here today in pursuit of wholeness. And I want to be super clear, that's a perfectly reasonable pursuit. In fact, I'm pursuing it all the time. And maybe to sort of explain this, I need to take a step back, both literally like I just did and also metaphorically. I don't feel whole. And I suspect, broadly speaking, that's going to be the general sentiment in the room. None of us probably on some level feel whole. And there's reasons for that. At the most basic level, the last 2 or 3 years, which in many ways feels like the last 10 years, I've started using the language of COVID years, kind of like dog years, but bad, has been exhausting. And there's a sense of isolation that many of us feel in relation to one another. I think maybe even more so in relation to ourselves, if that makes sense. We feel isolated from ourselves and who we are and who we're told we're supposed to be, who we aspire to be. So there's that. Then there's like the base level sort of lack of wholeness that we often feel, the scripts that we're fed around what success looks like, what victory conditions look like, the way our life is supposed to go, the identities, both literal and real and symbolic, that we take on or fail to meet, that we aspire towards. So that's like already there, kind of on the surface, below the surface, like even before you get to all the COVID exhaustion. And then there's like days like today and weeks like this week. There's Mother's Day. Just full disclosure, Mother's Day, at least for a church like Watershed, is kind of become a day where there's just not a lot of enthusiasm amongst our teaching team for claiming this one, because the church has a really, really bad history of navigating the implications of Mother's Day and the emotions and the conflicts and what people are feeling. Taryn said something this week as we were preparing, kind of this idea that maybe a healthier way of looking at this is by emphasizing this idea of mothering, because for reasons chosen and unchosen, oftentimes the kind of the stereotypical historical notion of motherhood is painful. Perhaps because of aspirations unmet, experiences that were hard, or any number of other reasons. I mean, for myself, the way I'm showing up to this, to a day like today, on top of, the years recently, on top of kind of like, just the challenge of life in general that I'm sure you all can relate to. I'm realized in kind of in preparation for showing up this Sunday that, like, the scripts that I've failed to fulfill over the last couple years have probably affected me more than I realized. So some context for that. So back in 2016, I was let go from the church I used to work at because I decided that I liked black people and gay people more than they did. And it's the nicest way to put it. And I moved here and found Watershed right away, which was lovely. But there wasn't like a job here for me right away. And so I did some other stuff, and my wife was working full time. And just the way that kind of the chips landed for us was that I ended up being the primary at-home parent for most of the week. At the time was my two kids. The third one came later, and I knew, because I'm a good progressive Christian, I knew that like all of the normal like gender norms and parent norms are like total bunk, and this was, and in many ways I like really reveled in this opportunity to like spend all this time with my kids, and so I was excited about that, but also feeling all of the things that like men are told that they should feel about, providing and money and things like that. And so I was, fighting those. And then my wife was feeling the same thing, feeling like she wasn't around our kids enough and things like that. And it's evolved, but I was reflecting on all of that this week, just the complexity of it, right? Like in that moment, like I was like, the two of us we were combating these scripts around what we were supposed to do, but then also like, I don't know, like you lean into the contradiction, kind of like, okay, well, that's BS. Like, society is wrong about that. Like, this is good, but all of it is just, words fail, right? Like, I'm not even finding the right words, because it's just contradiction all the way down. Trying to orient yourself in a world of expectations, narratives, definitions of normativity that many of us fail to meet on our best days. And then we experience a kind of anxiety or frustration about that. I don't know if this is like the dictionary or the proper clinical definition of frustration or anxiety, but like, I weave in and out of these two things. Frustration, what I mean by that is like this kind of seeing where I think I want to be or where I'm supposed to be, and then being frustrated that I can't get there. With anxiety over here, kind of just being like a general, I don't know what's going to happen. And because I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know how to show up. I don't know. I don't know what identity to occupy, what emotion to put forth. I don't know how to receive the inputs that I'm receiving relationally, societally. It's kind of a mess. I'm just assuming you all kind of know what I'm talking about. Maybe you're sitting here being like, ooh, that guy should take his own advice. He needs yoga and therapy. But I'd like to think we all do. And so as I'm showing up this morning, as we're kicking off this series, as we're doing our best to navigate Mother's Day, as we're doing our best to navigate the political climate of our country, which was turned up to the nth degree this week, I keep coming back to this idea that I don't believe in wholeness. Now, little disclaimer, little caveat. Next week, you're going to hear from one of my favorite people in the world, and she's going to tell you, she's probably going to give you a different take on wholeness. And so I acknowledge that there's some slippage with that word, right? It means different things to different people. So I want to try to explain what it means to me this morning. And really that example, who you're going to hear from next week, it's Kim, by the way. That was Kim. Who you're going to hear from next week and me, just the slippage between that word, and this is where I'm going to get all nerdy on you, that kind of gets at what I'm getting at here. Like, words fail. And not just in the cliche way, like you've probably heard that before, like someone talking about something that is deeply painful or deeply beautiful, and as they try to put it to words, words fail, and you know, things like that. But like, literally, like almost at a definitional level, like language is broken. Like the entire way that language works is we are constantly trying to articulate, trying to arrest, trying to pin down, I don't know what just happened, trying to pin down our experience, trying to hold it in place with symbols, language, words, letters, images sometimes. And it fails, and that failure causes us to grasp more desperately, to search more intently, more fervently, to find modifier words, new words. You know, many of you probably, you know, grew up with the torturous experience of learning how to diagram a sentence. You know, like this is the adverb and this is the adjective, and I'm traumatizing many of you right now. But even that process is kind of just like parsing out our attempt to make sense of our experience of the world as best we can and failing. So at the very least, when I say that I don't believe in wholeness, what I mean is I don't think at any point we're ever going to arrive at some kind of equilibrium wherein that sense of longing, this sort of, this gap, this sort of failure that we feel goes away, if only in part because words fail. Because even I experience this all the time. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It makes sense in my head, and then the moment I open my dumb mouth, it's like, that's not what I meant. And maybe I try to pull the words back in. Maybe I fumble with new ones, trying to clarify. And that's even assuming that like we even mean the same thing by the words that we're talking about. Like at best, maybe we're at like 80%. It's a mess. And there's this idea within faith communities, maybe outside of faith communities, maybe it's just kind of a universal idea, but the idea is grace, right? And the way I was raised to think about grace is sort of it's a reactionary thing. It comes in after the fact, after the failure, and it says, it's all right, like, we're good, you know, we're gonna let this one slide for now. I think, what was the kind of the weird fundamentalist way it was told to me? Like, mercy was not giving someone something that they deserve, like punishment-wise, and grace was giving something they don't deserve. Don't go with that. I mean, it's probably fine, but a definition that I like a little bit better, I think this comes from Paul Tillich, the theologian, is grace is accepting that you're accepted. I like that a little bit better. No, a lot of it better. I like that a lot of it better. But what I want to get at today, biblically, is that, at least in some parts of the Bible, and I'm not, spoiler alert, this might also be scary for some of you. I don't necessarily think that the Bible is always 100% consistent on this front. Sometimes there's like different narratives going on. But at least part of the biblical narrative that I'm excited about is this idea that this whole notion of like grace coming in late and like picking up the pieces or picking up the loose ends. There's kind of a counter narrative going on in the story of Jesus at like a macro level, like big picture level, that kind of complicates this a little bit. So I was trying to land on like what passage I wanted to zero in on to prove this to you or show it to you or whatever you need the Bible to do for you. And I just found all of these verses, too many to list. I actually have a slide that lists a bunch of them. All of these passages, and we're not going to look at all of them, that would be exhausting, but like all of these passages talk about Jesus, or the Son, the eternal Son, you know, for you Trinitarian enthusiasts and things like that, as this thing or this entity or this being or this force or this power, there's a lot of metaphors, that existed like before everything, like before time began, before the universe began. You know, this verbiage, before the foundation of the world, gets used a lot, which is epic. And Sometime, if you're one of those like people who like really likes nerding out over theological things, I love you. That's me. I'm not going to indulge you as much as I want to right this moment. We can do that like over coffee or something at a different time. But there's all sorts of like theories and stuff like that about like what's God's relationship to time, because that's a big question for some people, and me included. So don't feel bad about that. But what I want to get to is in some of these passages, and this is the one we're actually going to look at. Jesus is also described as the Word. And I was thinking about that a lot because, my whole thing here is like words fail. There's this gap. There's this failure between what is and what we at least believe or told ought to be. That failure, that gap in language, in words, in our experience, in our ability to articulate, to grasp the world around us. Well, if we're going to take the Bible at its word, there is something maybe intrinsic to the person of God. So John 1, you all have heard this before. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. So once again, beginning, whatever God's relationship with time, this was before or there, concurrent or, simultaneous, I don't know. But the word, the Greek, yes, many of you have probably heard this, is logos. The whole point here is this idea that whatever we mean by Jesus, is God's self-description of God's self. And you see this throughout the Bible, God speaking things into existence. Band, that's not your cue. I'm going to get back to that. They know when I get back to the Genesis narrative, it is their cue. I'm just going to tell you all. They can hear me right now. I'm just going to tell them when it's their cue. That's not it. But God speaking things into existence. And there's a way that you could read this passage and kind of interpret much of the rest of the scripture through this passage where, the idea is God's trying to describe God's self. And in the gap, the failure, the inability to, describe the infinite, to describe the eternal, to describe the divine, that's creation. Does that make sense? It doesn't, but I'm going to try to make it make more sense. God speaks God, and in the gap is all of us, born and bearing the image of God. In all of our attempts to describe ourselves, in all of our failures, all of our gaps to be whole, there is, in fact, the image of God within us. So maybe you're already starting to get the connection that I'm trying to make here. This idea of accepting that you're accepted, this idea of grace, in many ways, maybe is from the beginning. And what I mean by that is, maybe the gap, maybe. I thought I heard the band coming out. Maybe the failure, maybe the inability to arrest the kind of wholeness that we seek is not a bug but a feature. And I want to be super careful with what I mean by that, because many of us experience all sorts of hurts and traumas, all sorts of harm, all sorts of marginalization and exploitation. In fact, much of what we do here at Watershed, much of our mission, our reason for being is to explore the intersections of what is faith, what is spirituality, what does God have to say about the very material ways in which trauma, abuse, harm shows up both personally, individually, and then also systemically within our society, within our politics, within our relationships. So what I don't want to do is create this narrative wherein I'm trying to say, that's actually good. That's been done by Christians in the past, both with good and bad intention, and that's not what I'm going for here. But maybe kind of what I want to be thinking about is this idea that there is a fundamental gap. There is a fundamental failure, so fundamental that it's synonymous with the very being of God. And that gap, that failure that we then experience is the very image of God within us. And rather than run from it, rather than resist it, because here's my thesis, here's my theory, it is precisely our attempts to fill the gap, precisely our attempts to overcome it, to defend ourselves from it, to create a buffer, a barrier, to win, that leads us to spiral into all of the ways that we hurt and abuse and harm ourselves and one another. all of our attempts to finally get there, and just to kind of concretize this for you, for some of us, it's a longing towards what could be, towards the future. You might find yourself saying, I've certainly found myself saying, to people like, you want to or you're not. More often, this is how it shows up. You're not on the right side of history on this. As if the moral arc of the universe really does, by default, bend towards justice. It's a nice idea. I might be a little skeptical. So there's this future orientation, and then I think particularly pertinent this week for some, there is this past orientation that if we can just get back to some sort of, and it's a fantasy, by the way, but if we can just get back to the way things used to be, the good old days, everything will be great again, and that will be right. We'll finally be, the reason that we don't feel whole, the reason that we feel this failure, this gap, this lack, is because we've strayed from the path. And so, and I've got my political alignments, but even within that, there is still this sort of shared motivation across the personal, political, social spectrum of, if we can just figure out this thing that's going to make us whole. There's like an in-between version here, right? You're both wrong. It's just balanced in the middle, But all of it sort of takes for granted this idea that if we can just kind of get it right, if we can just overcome, if we can just fill the gap, overcome the failure, we'll have it. It'll be there. And so we get kind of this ends justifies the means mentality, where it doesn't matter what we have to sacrifice. Sometimes the sacrifice even feels good. Doesn't matter, the collateral damage. Let's just get there. But what if we gave ourselves permission to see the image of God in us in the gaps? What if grace meant something about our ability to accept that we're accepted, and in doing so, accept that it is precisely when words fail, literally, theologically, philosophically, metaphorically, precisely when, I'll personalize it, precisely when I don't live into or live up to the scripts of masculinity, what parenthood should look like, success as a human, as an individual, as an American, as a friend, as an ally. Not that those are always good things, but in the same way that for God, perhaps, it is this gap, this failure, as God attempts to, that's a weird phrase, God attempts something. As God attempts to speak God, and the gap, in that gap is this infinite well of creativity, this infinite well of possibility. All of us. If we can align ourselves with that, see ourselves with that, identify our own failure, our own gap with that divinity, with that infinity, with that possibility, does that free us then in some way? Does that free us to not strive, hustle, conquer? I don't know, you could fill in all sorts of imperialistic metaphors here, but does that free us to not buffer ourselves against one another, hoping that if we can just white knuckle it long enough and hard enough, we'll finally feel whole? Is there something, and I don't know, this feels biblical to me, is there something about, losing on purpose? The last shall be first. You must lose your life to have it. I desire to know nothing but Christ and Him crucified. I am crucified in Christ, but it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Is there something about this idea, counterintuitive as it might seem, of almost losing on purpose, embracing the failure, embracing the gap, that in a certain way sets us free? Sets us free knowing that because it won't be whole, because it won't be perfect, because it won't finally be final, that in embracing that gap, this well of possibility springs up, and then we can actually do something. We can actually do something. We can organize together. We can be in solidarity with one another. That idea of solidarity is key for me here, because if the only thing that's universal amongst us is the failure, if it's the only thing that's universal amongst us, that's collective amongst us, is this gap, then in truth we share this collective vulnerability. And that collective vulnerability is, my point here, is God, the image of God in us. That's the divine. Man, we could do some really cool things politically, some really good things organizationally, some really good things relationally, societally, interpersonally, if we just embraced that, if we bought into it, if we believed it. So I guess what I'm getting here is words fail, we fail. There's a gap. I feel it, you feel it, I think. And we don't always have to overcome the gap, and maybe it is precisely our failure to overcome the gap that is the opportunity for the creative power of God to burst forth. And I think you see this in the creation narrative. This is the cue. The whole Genesis 1 creation narrative. God does what? God speaks things into existence. And I'm going to play a little fast and loose with it here, right? So, and I'm going to get the days wrong. Not a good pastor. So, like day 1, God said, let there be light, and then there was evening and morning, and God's like, it's okay. And then I think the next day might have been the land or the water, I don't know. Either way, God was like, God shrugs, it's good, it's good. And then we get to, I think, some birds or fish or something, and then plants, but either way, same thing. Yeah, God's like, that's pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. And we get to the land animals and the stars and stuff in there. Stars are cool. God's not impressed. And then yes, day 6 or near the end of day 6, after the rest of the land animals were mediocre, God's like, okay, God makes humans in God's image, and God says, very good, or maybe God says, that'll do, good enough. And God's ultimate response to all of this, I think this is a poem, by the way. I don't think this is how it actually happened, but, everything in the Bible is true. Some of it actually happened. It's kind of my posture on this passage, but I think there's something true and beautiful in this narrative. So we get to the final day, and God finally accepts that words fail. So what does God do instead? Takes a break. Rests. In the student space, we have a few values that sort of guide our time together, and one of those values is play. And what I mean by play is sort of the freedom to practice being human, almost set aside in a rejuvenating sense, without the scripts, without the pressures, without the victory conditions. Because God knows our students, our adolescents, have a lot of victory conditions in their life. They get younger and they get younger, and the anxiety rises and rises because there are so many things that they've been told, so many boxes they need to check, even things that are historically fun, historically rejuvenating, historically life-giving have been commodified, attached their futures into their success, and this is a generation that is intimately aware of what's coming. Debt, climate change, an increasingly divided and hostile political climate. They feel all that. They internalize all that. So play. And it's not just the students. You all do the same thing. So play is this opportunity to practice our humanity with one another without the victory conditions. Play as Sabbath. Play as rest. And don't get me wrong, what I'm not saying is that in the face of pain, trauma, marginalization, injustice, that we just play. That's a sort of tone-deaf, sort of privileged thing that I might have said, 10 years ago from the stage. But what I am saying, what I hope I'm saying, what I think I'm trying to say is, when we play, we practice our humanity, and when we practice our humanity, we're simultaneously practicing our divinity. Because it's precisely in the way that our humanity fails, in the way that words fail, in the way that we feel, and the gap between the is and the ought, that is where the creative possibility, the creative energy, the creative power of God bursts forth in us. And I think there somewhere, in the solidarity that collective and mutual vulnerability creates, there is some genuine opportunity for change. That we need to go through the play, through the rest, through the cross, through this idea of losing on purpose, through the ways that we fall short and all the ways that we're told we shouldn't. Maybe somewhere in there is a kernel of freedom, something that will allow us to come together and struggle, because it'll be a struggle. Strive and struggle, believing that a different world is actually possible. So if I was able to reduce this all to one line, this is the end. I've already given you one cliche for the morning. Words fail, so I'll give you another. Mind the gap. Very simple. Don't go over it. Don't fill it. Mind it, embrace it, mine it, change the D to an E. Because in that gap, in that failure, in your humanity, is precisely, exactly, gracefully, and most perfectly when the image of God is most visible and present in you. Yeah, I think I'm good with that. Grace and peace.
If you're willing and able to stand with us as we close in song, we'd like to invite you to do so.
You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance of my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have crafted me. Love has called my name, and I've been welcomed in to your family. You've loved us all the same. Let's sing that out again. From my mother's womb, you have crafted me. Love
You're never gonna let me down. 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 You're never gonna let me down.
You are good, good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good, God. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh,
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
I am a child of God. I am a child of God. I am a child of God.
God, we thank you for these moments shared this morning. We thank you for speaking to us through David this morning, and may we mind the gap. And may we continue to see you in the places where we thought we might miss you, God. And I ask that you would just remind us as we go that mothering comes from you, that it's something we all can do, it's something we all experience and are experiencing. And we thank you for all who continue this beautiful practice of mirroring you in the world through mothering. We love you and we thank you for these moments shared. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you for being with us this morning. We hope you have a great week.
We sing out. We sing, holy is your name. We sing out. We sing, worthy is your name. We sing out. We sing, holy is your name. We sing out. We sing, worthy is your name. Oh, what is your name? Hey, what is your name? What is your name? Let every heart, let every tongue lift up your name. With all creation sing.